Welcome to Fact or Freestyle.
People love Dave Nourie, and they always answer the phone when he calls. When we get him on Zoom, we ask him to confirm rumors.
Let's see how far down the rabbit hole we go.
I mean, how do you Dave doing balance tricks and moving all through his bikes, and I'm doing my style. How do you say one's better than the other?
That is a very difficult situation, in fact. So I judged a contest recently, and I judged with Ephraim Catlow, and Ephraim is the head judge of FEAS. And so it's great to judge alongside him because he helps you. There are some sort of categories like difficulty, variety, consistency, that kind of thing. But when it comes down to, two guys who have a perfect run, then it's like, well, did he do all his own tricks or did he do someone else's tricks? And it comes down to the originality. So are you bringing your stuff or someone else's? And the breadth of techniques that you can bring to the game. And breadth of techniques is beyond just front wheel, back wheel. It could be pivots. It could be cross foot where you actually cross both ways.
It's so technical. You have to be technical. Like looking at every little thing, and then also think like knowing the riders. Like, oh, is that just his standard run? He did a flawless. Matthias did a flawless run, but has he been doing that same run for the last few years? And then they would judge it based on that. So it's not. And we had a show when we had Mark Eaton on, and we talked about when the plywood hoods came. And the plywood hoods came, and like Kevin Jones did I don't know if you were there, RL, but he did the backwards infinity rollback, and then he stood up. Do you remember that?
You mean backwards during our time?
Yeah, during our time. So it was the late 80s.
I don't remember that. I know the impact, and I remember seeing stuff that he did. I just don't remember that particularly.
But the judging, couldn't really see it. It was like they were just the organization people of AFA and like parents. They weren't riders, and like Flatland, I think especially, and all BMX has in all the discipline, they have to look at so many different variables and really know the sport in and out to be able to even start to judge it. And then there's the whole, like what you said, RL, the artistic. It's like, okay, well, Nourie did a great fun. He made the crowd laugh and he did all these crazy balance tricks, well, that has its own value. How can we compare that value to someone that can spin a time machine no-handed and do all these variations? It's just hard.
Well, I mean, I remember on our scorecard, originality was a big part of it.
Right.
They would say, and I had at.
I did my Flatland trick though that I did. I think I made up was a frame stand where you put my foot on the bars and I spin the bars, and like you remember whenever Dennis and RL, they were just like so neck and neck, and at the AFA along like I think maybe 87, and and then RL did my trick in his run and beat Dennis. So every time I always just tell Dennis, sorry, bro, I'm sorry. I invented a Flatland trick that can make you lose the title, but like
that's so good.
That runoff with Dennis, the judges came up to me and go, we didn't know how to score you because you're doing all your own tricks. So I'm like, isn't originality part of the deal? I mean, I don't know. I was like, well, that's kind of the problem, with it. I mean, the competition, it does push you, it causes you to practice, but it kind of changed your mentality a little bit too, you know? And in racing bikes or motorcycles, competition makes sense. I mean, it's a race, but freestyle is, there's a lot of gray areas on how to judge that,
Yeah, good point.
So
we actually heard something about that runoff, and I'd like to go a little bit off script and ask you about this. So it came to our attention that you did a frame stand bar spin in that, and you did it on something other than a giant Skyway platform, and that was the thing that got you to beat Dennis.
Wait, in the runoff between me and Dennis
Yeah,
at the velodrome,
yeah.
Dennis won.
Yeah,
The-
Dennis won that.
Dennis and I tied, and he won the runoff.
So Matt, I think Matt misremembers this because Matt told us the other way around.
That I won it.
Matt Wilhelm.
Yeah,
This is
Matt
the one.
Hoffman. Matt Hoffman. Matt
Oh,
Hoffman says that you beat Dennis with the runoff. Now it might have been in a different contest, but he actually brings that up to Dennis. He's like, "Hey
That's
Dennis,
the only
sorry."
runoff I've ever been in.
Oh, look at that! This
Hey,
this
man,
is why
come
we
on.
do these things. These are
Can't
crazy.
question Matt. I mean, he's been through hell and back. I mean, I'm surprised he could remember that. I had a hard time. And no disrespect to Matt, I'm just, man, the guy, I can't even believe he still rides.
I know.
Yeah, yeah. He's
But
incredible.
no, I did like 2 boomerangs, but I had 1 foot on the handlebar.
factOrFreestyle. RL Osborn never named any of his tricks.
So you could like go like this.
Yeah, it's the Xerox machine because everybody's going to copy it.
Right.
I read the
Oh, I don't-
magazines.
I never thought of it that way. I don't even remember who named that, but okay, that makes sense. Xerox. I'm learning. Yeah, to be honest, I couldn't lose to somebody better than Dennis McCoy. I mean, I got a lot of respect for him, just like I do for you, Dave, with your originality. I always admire that about you, the fact that you didn't just start copying Kevin Jones. You stuck with your own stuff. And I mean, you go to a contest and man, you see everybody does the hot trick. It's done a million times, and
Yeah.
for me, it's good to see that, but I also like seeing something totally different, like what you did. It shows you a whole nother aspect to the sport, So
It's
a lot
interesting
of
that
respect.
thank you so much. And I have to tell you a couple things. First off, my style of riding, that I always rode at the beach. It was always about like the performance. And I remember watching you in contests, especially, and you were like so dialed. And I just took that to heart. It's like, okay, like sometimes I'll go riding with buddies and we're just like goofing around. But when someone's like, okay, it's showtime, it's like game's on, and it's like all of a sudden the ground's lava. You don't touch the ground.
Yeah,
And
right.
right. And you just like, you do whatever you can to just be on point, And I think that's gained it's opened a lot of doors for me and I teach that to the kids now. I say, okay, we're going to do a contest. So that means you do your tricks that you can do. Doesn't matter if it's the simplest trick, doesn't matter what it is, but put together a few tricks and just be on your game and then I'll give them an example. I'll do a trick and I'll mess up. And instead of like just tapping my foot, I'll like get off the bike and walk kind of like bummed out. It's like, no, guys, when you're in show mode, if you touch, you can get away with it. You just like dab your foot and the audience won't even recognize it. So that was really inspiring to me watching you you see it in the magazines and that's one thing. It's like, okay, cool. That's RL. And like he's got all these original tricks, but when I'd watch you specifically in a contest, because I never saw you at a show, I only seen you in contest. And man, it was like, and now to hear that you flew in that morning and then flew out that day, that's even more props.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, that's so cool. Because I would always like to get there ahead of time, get my bike dialed, like get a good night's sleep, make sure I have a good breakfast. Like I couldn't imagine doing it the same day. So
yeah, it was man, it stands out so much in my head. And the other part of it is that why do I want to learn something Kevin Jones has already mastered? I mean, it's like,
right.
I don't even want to go down that road. I'll just do my own stuff, which, everybody, like, I had things that fit me that I wanted to do. And that's what I wanted to do. I was going to at least do what I wanted to do, Same thing with you. You had your own personal style. And that Kevin Jones had his own personal style. That's the beautiful thing. If everybody's doing exactly the same thing, to me, it's not as full.
Yeah.
I don't know,
For sure. Hey, Joe, don't we have some factor freestyles that we can run by RL? I think we had a couple in mind.
Yeah.
This is
So
kind of the format that we have.
You're not talking very much, Joe.
So Here we go. All right.
Come on, let that stuff out.
All right. So
Fact or freestyle? Bob Harrow is an over gripper.
the first one we have up here, RL, is Bob Harrow is an over gripper.
An over gripper.
When
What does that
Bob
mean?
Harrow first meets you, he shakes your hand way too hard, excessively firm handshake, way over the top. Is this true?
I don't remember ever shaking Bob's hand. I mean, not that I didn't like him. I mean, we definitely had our issues, you know, because we lived together. But I don't ever remember shaking his hand.
So here's why we ask. Pete Augustine. He met Bob Harrow. Bob laid into him, caught him off guard, and to this day, Pete is pissed and he flexes every time because he's ready to go again. And it happened to Dave too. Bob Harrow crushed Dave's hand after a show, and go on, Dave.
It was actually after the contest. So I was telling this story on the first show that we did. And I was like, yeah, when I first met Bob, I just finished my contest run. He came out to Lakeside, California to meet me because Ron Wilton was going to do shows with you. That's how I got on Harrow. Do you know that? Do you know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So check this out. I went to Huntington Beach and I entered novice class. I knew Ron Wilton from San Diego. I used to ride with him a little bit at Mission Beach. And he told me, look, I can't really say much, but there might be an opportunity for you at Harrow. So he didn't like show his hand, but he knew that he was on his way out to join you with BMX Action Trick Team and that there'd be an opening in Harrow. So he put in a good word. Bob comes to this contest in Lakeside and I just finished my run, and thank goodness, because he said, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Bob Harrow. And of course, like I know it's Bob Harrow, shook his hand and he just like crushed it, like grinded my knuckles to the point where I could not. And I was describing this and Pete's like, you know what? That mother did the same thing to me. And ever since then, I never let my guard down. So we've just been asking people as we go along, and there's been a couple other confirmations that they have experienced this, and we just kind of, you know, we kind of curious. And then we start to think about, well, is there some connection? Why didn't Bob Harrow ever do a grip? He did everything else.
Right.
Is there some metaphor behind that?
We're getting deep now, huh?
Exactly.
Oh, it gets deep. That's why we put the show together.
And that's
We
what's
think the roots go very deep.
I love deep, man. I'm all about deep. So.
All right. So
I never heard that. I never heard that, but go ahead. You got more interesting things like that?
Because of the 15-minute limit that YouTube has started to put on front hop tutorials for channels that have 10,000 followers of 50-plus-year-old men, we had to chop this in several parts. Get that? Anyway, tap the link above to go to the next show, because we had to cut this episode into several parts that you will have to re-weld together. Okay,